morning. Okay, I'm in a very severe mood today, so watch out. Dogma. How do you define dogma? When do you know someone's being dogmatic? I think that's a huge topic because no sensible person wants to be exposed to dogma. How do we good morning. How do we define dogma and know, especially religious people have to face this question. When do you know that you're accepting the dogma of some people that happen to be influencers? Okay, if I learned a new word. They happen to be influencers in a certain milieu, if you will. Right? And good morning. There's cultures and subcultures, and if you don't think that being a Hasidic is a subculture of a sort, you just don't have that word in your lexicon. Dogma is something that everybody has to have a standard of determining. You have to know. If you're exposed to dogma, then you just became someone's robot or dog. Dog marches. So I put the word dogma in my poem here. Dog marches head to tail. Their heads are down. Who's driving this thing? Their head is in someone's, on what are those, the sleds with the huskies. And the crack of the whip. Who's driving the sled? Are you being driven? Are you someone's chariot? You have to be a chariot of God, okay? And of course you have to be that. How are you going to know when you are going to be in line with that? How do you know? Just going to take what some guy says? That is really stupid. You have to learn. That's why you have to learn Torah. You have to understand Torah yourself. When you learn the Torah of someone who really impresses you, you'll take their ruling seriously. If you have a Rebbe, these words are precious to you. So it's up to everyone to interpret the Rebbe's words. Especially now, you have kids growing up in a time they've never even seen a Rebbe. What is their connection to the Rebbe? Through his words. So whose words are we going to allow to form our consciousness? Who are we exposing our children to in the Mashpim and the Rosh Hashivas? What are we exposing to them? You have to be sensitive to that. And you have to know where it's coming from. We have a Rebbe who now, the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Lubavitch Rebbe said, he's going to the heavens, but he's leaving himself over to the people in his Sfarim. The words of a Rebbe become, it's not just the way everybody interprets them. It's the way you interpret it. This whole, okay, like the Rebbe himself cannot say the interpretations are wrong. Once he says the mimer, it's exposed to interpretation, and therefore the prevailing understanding is more important than the Rebbe's own interpretation of his own words. That's like a prophetic aspect that the prophet himself cannot darshan it better than somebody else. That other person might be out darshan the Rebbe on his own prophetic words, if you want to say it's prophecy or Ruach HaKodesh or however you want to. You understand what a Rebbe's words are. Once he says the mimer, it's open to interpretation. Our children now have only, just to be real, okay, you could say the Rebbe's walking around right now on the street, but just to be real, children don't see that, they don't live with that. So they understand the Rebbe to our exposure to them of how we understand the Rebbe's words, and we don't allow other people to understand it in any other way. That's dogma. That is dogma. Dogma, I'll just give away the secret. I'm in the middle of a haiku. I can't say 10 words of one poem without interrupting it. It's a 10-word poem. There's 6 words. And I have to interrupt that. Good morning, everyone. So what's the litmus test for dogma? I'll tell you what it is. I'm resigning from Beis Mashiach. Okay, there, I said it. Maybe I'll change my mind, but I'm pretty much decided. Because I'll tell you what the issue is soon. But how do you know in general that something is dogma? You're feeding your kids someone's interpretation of the Rebbe. You better be pretty sure that that person has had talks with other perspectives and has exposed himself to other ways of understanding things before that they enforce their view of the Rebbe's will, because they understand the Rebbe's words a certain way. And people, I'm telling you, are trapped in a certain fragment of time, a slice of time. They just cannot, they don't understand that even Hasidic culture changes. Hasidic fashion even, I'm saying the most superficial aspects of culture, change. How do I know? Look at old pictures. Just don't expose yourself to dogma. Use your own brain to understand things. If I'm saying something, you reflect on it. Yeah, it's an idea. People don't talk about ideas. That's how you know it's dogma. If they say you have to limit this person's exposure with no reason, or we have to take away certain status, like they wanted to take away my editorial column. I think they still would allow my name as editor, but they don't want it to have the voice of the magazine. And they said they took it off the Hebrew side. I don't know if that's true or not. Someone could do the research. That the Hebrew side took off the editorial also because they cannot have no official voice of the magazine. Why? Because no one is willing to allow anyone to say anything except the way the Rebbe's words were interpreted at a certain fragment of time. And no one is daring to revisit and say, maybe we got the idea completely wrong. Maybe we do live in a world and we have to talk the language and we have to be able to read and write. Maybe these things are important. Maybe the Yeshua, Nar Melashin Katnus, the Yeshua that went into the land, the chosen one, the Nar, the one that God loves and therefore gives him the ability to appreciate the essence of him, the essence of his love also in a relationship. That's the Yeshua after Moshe was Gimel Tamlist. After Moshe was silenced, Yeshua for the first time had a voice, and that's the one that God chooses. And that's what the Rebbe says. And okay, I've been writing about this like every day, so just look all that up. It's a lot there, but the whole idea is this one point. I'll have to say it again. There's two ways to understand Na'ar. Why does God love us? There's a stage of his love that is when you're just learning. I'm just absorbing. Moshe Rabbeinu is talking now. This is the chashmal. Electricity is chash, silence, and mal, speech. There's a time to be quiet and a time to speak, it says in Koheles. There's a time to speak. There's a time, a phase in your life and life of a movement when you're just absorbing the message. And you don't have your own personality at all. Yeshua was Moshe. He was a clear portrayal of Moshe. He had no thoughts of his own at all. That's what it says. He had no personality expressed. He had an underlying personality that he did not act on at all. So that is a stage of our education that you do have to indoctrinate in a point of education. But you're trusting someone, so the guy better get it right. I'm saying, okay, so so there's a phase. The first stage is absorption. That you are by definition exposing children to indoctrination. The next stage, the higher stage, is you're on your own. Now it's up to you to have the integrity to feel like your vision, your understanding, your interpretation, your system of values is guided by something pure enough to say, I've read a lot of what the Rebbe said, and this is the way I understand how we should approach this issue. What is the issue that I'm exposed to this dogma of? What is it? I've been the editor for over 20 years. Okay? What is the one issue that they were going to silence? 20 years. Sometimes they were talking about things about metaphysics, where the Rebbe's here and physical, all these kind of things came up. Okay, that's like so weird. But what is the one issue that we could not work out, and that they could not even talk about the issue at all? I'm going to read it to you. If I get around to it, it's getting late, so the sun's coming up still, actually. Looks like it could be going down. but it's not. So we got to see the positive. So in this sense, what were they going to silence? The chashmal, when were they trying to mean hush, hush, be silent? What was the issue? Try and guess, type it in, because if you get this, then you really understand the times we live in now. And when we define what is the defining feature of old school, and I mean old school means the school that should have been closed already. It's that old. Times change. Times change, people. It's important even in the most fundamental level interpretation. The Rebbe revolutionized the way we understand Rashi. Revolutionized it completely. The Rebbe asks us to make a revolution that's true to our understanding of everything the Rebbe said. I'm saying people's dogma, I'm not saying it comes from a bad place necessarily. It comes from a place of fear. It's the lash of the driver. They love the driver, okay? The Huskies love their owner, right? The Hasidim love the Rebbe. Every Chassid loves the Rebbe and does not want to shame the Rebbe, chas v'chalila. Every person, if he's really a Chassid. That's the only definition of a Chassid, really. But the idea now is a Chassid is someone's framework that he wrote. The way he understood something in a certain fragment of time, and you're never going to look deeper. That's the dogma. But it comes from, I'm saying, it could come from a good place. It's the fear of going the wrong direction of the driver, of the Rebbe. The Rebbe is the one that's driving the sled. Their fear of the lash of the driver here means the Rebbe's saying, how could you do this? There was a time, okay, here's an example that they might, if they actually wanted to engage the issue, they could say something like this. I think it was a Lag BaOmer parade, okay, that was passing before the Rebbe, and the music that was played was so influenced by popular culture that the Rebbe says, are they trying to get me to leave? The Rebbe did not get involved with determining the music, pretty much. Okay, so if something was pretty offensive, maybe it was too loud, I don't know exactly what was bothering the Rebbe, but there is this concept. So to chas v'shalom not represent the Rebbe in a dignified way, the way the Rebbe would want to be presented, there is that sensitivity. You have to have that, because that's coming from a good place. But the focus, the litmus test is, what is the focus? Is it the ideas, or is it just the silencing? So what are they silencing? The voice of women. That's what it comes down to. I'll show you. This is proof in my life. Okay, it's anecdotal. I didn't take a survey. It's just anecdotal. Okay, but it's my life experience, and therefore it's very important to me, very significant to me. And since I have your ear, I'm going to share that with you. It's women. They are the ones that are being silenced. A woman doesn't speak, right? I could give you a source and tell you, she doesn't speak in front of her husband. The husband speaks. But the Rebbe's understanding of that, look at the Rebbe's way of looking at it. Who is the proper woman? The one who does the will of her husband, or the Rebbe says, establishes the will of her husband. Eishes chayil, a crown of the king. What's beyond, beyond his thought? His driving focus is what the crown represents. The Eishes chayil is the driving force. It is so this convinced me, of course. Every time dogma is expressed, you know that what they're being dogmatic about is the issue. Maybe they're right about the issue, but the fact that they're doing with dogma tells you that they should not represent the issue that's at stake here. So if we want to understand the importance of women, I would suggest let's look at what the Rebbe said. Okay, I have another poem. I'm gonna leave it off for now. It's a slightly different topic, and I want to read now what was so offensive. Okay? Are you with me? What was so offensive that in over 20 years, the only thing that had to be silenced, that cannot be negotiated in terms of like direction for the magazine, is this issue. The voice of women. This is an article, okay? This is the offensive article. It's called Reprehensible. So the title itself is at stake here, because this is reprehensible, what I wrote. To this old school, I'm telling you, it is, they put in the names of the visionaries, the Vad HaRuchni, the spiritual board of the magazine. They put in their name. Okay? What's the issue? The voice of women. Good morning. The voice of women. Okay? This is the article I wrote. I've read it a million times to you already. I've already indulged, but now it becomes much more sensitive because most of what I'm quoting here are quotes. I barely say, I think, maybe one sentence of interpretation. So those one or two sentences, those are the issues, I think, that are most at stake. And if I'm right, then it's a travesty. And if I'm wrong, then show me I'm wrong and I'll shut up, obviously. Give me a break. Talk about an issue. This is what I wrote. How could she? That's reprehensible. Not everyone is happy with media attention, especially when speaking about social media. Okay, maybe you're not in this whole cultural repression to not even know what I'm talking about. But, okay, now you're learning a history lesson of some weird old culture. So try and tune into that so you can relate. The outraged party, a frum lady, participated in an event to promote wearing sheitlach, wigs, promoting tznius in general. And here she appears in videos posted on someone's social media page. Religious Jewish magazines typically don't feature pictures of women, even in the mainstream women's magazines. So I'm bringing a very old school approach. And I haven't criticized it yet. So far I couldn't have said anything offensive. And if this wasn't just anyone who posted the footage, it was the guest speaker posted, the offended party of being posted about the person who appeared in this video. The guest speaker herself was the one. So this is very controversial. Not only that, it happened to be a Lubavitcher shlucha. And maybe that was like, I misrepresented here Chabad by saying that there could be such a person. So that is also a silencing. Think about it. If I can't even report that a Lubavitch shlucha put a video of another woman on social media, if I can't even say that, think about how much they're trying to silence that idea. Think about how important that is. So therefore, we really have to understand what's right or wrong. We do not want to be directed by someone else's dogma and interpretation. Look into the issues. Think about the sensitivities from both sides, because that I could prove to you how. Okay, I can't get into the whole discussion of fashion, how it changed. Look at the Friedrich Rebbe's Chassidim. Fashion changes. Even the Rebbe himself did not take on the fashion. Okay, it happened through a political event. But he wears a fedora and not a shtreimel. He changed fashion. Why? Because he is a person that exists within a time frame. And it changes from time to time. The Rebbe Rashab wore a different style hat. Why didn't he go back to the Rebbe Rashab style hat if he didn't want to wear a shtreimel for political reasons? Because your person is affected by the times. It is inevitable. Forget about whether it's good or bad. It's inevitable. I think it's good, and I could prove that to you too. But we have different topics to discuss. When it comes to modesty, the Rebbe is its biggest advocate. This is what I'm writing, and this is what was so offensive. I came across this in a sikha. Attention should be directed to the caution required when a Jewish woman or girl travels in a taxi or car, if the driver is a man, to avoid the concern of yichud, of being alone with someone. A practicing Rav should be consulted to determine the various laws and precise details of the matter. The Rebbe says a rule and then says, you want to know how to implement this rule? Go to the interpretation of the Rav of your area. So look at the power and authority of the Rav the Rebbe gives to the Rav here. Huge. The Rav is going to interpret it this through time now. There's going to be a different generation of Rabbanim, and they are going to say, this is the way I understand what the Rebbe said. You want to show me how I'm wrong? Let's talk about the issue. I know 100 sources, you know 10,000. Fantastic. Show me one that does not fit in with mine. That's the way Torah works. That's how you determine the correct view, not by just asserting authority. I'm just showing you how it relates to what the Rebbe is saying here. The Rebbe is saying it's something here that's super from. And the Rebbe says, go to a Rav. Why? Just leave out the go to a Rav part. I just told you what to do. Torah exists through time and through interpretation, and you have to have obviously integrity and intellectual integrity and being genuine and really not being. But everybody has an agenda. They just don't know where it's coming from. Your agenda should be, I want to do only what you God wants. How am I going to know that? Because someone else should understand things this way. Is that being genuine to you? Is that what God wants? Come on. Who are you? You're like 6 years old? Give me a break. The Rebbe's words of caution appear where he tells how in recent times, so in other words, the context of this footnote about the taxi, where does that come from? The Rebbe there is talking about how Jewish women reach out to inspire other women in venues outside their homes. They have to travel. The Rebbe is saying here, if you're going to, even when you're traveling, you have to take concern about the standards of tznius that are acceptable. Be sensitive to that, enough to consult with a Rav, since you don't learn the Torah yourself all day. Give that task to someone else to interpret the Torah, that they do study all day, that they could give their opinion. So it's all about ideas, ultimately. Your in personal interpretation of authentic words, authentic interpretation of genuine Torah words. True, the approach of women is characterized by the private domain. It's the Rebbe speaking. Kol kvud bas melech pnima, all the honor of the princess is within. But even when taking the well springs of Judaism outwards to the public, they do so with the modesty of private life, with self-respect and dignity. Their transportation is therefore also governed by this sensitivity. It is interesting to note how in Torah, modest dress is relative to the occasion. Now this is me speaking. The Rebbe did not say this, but no one could argue with this, what I'm saying. Well, listen. Rivka Imenu, Rebecca, covers her face only when approaching Yitzchak, her husband-to-be, which shows you that it was not covered before that, when she was going with her male company, Eliezer. So there, I mean, if I was a Rav, I would want to put the halacha in the context of that fact. When I was, okay, so there are some, clearly, I just thought of this now, it's interesting. Eliezer was traveling together with her. There are times where you do things that you would try to avoid if you were in a different situation. You have to understand what God wants from you. So how do you do that? That's what Torah is, that's what halacha is. So obviously, you take the word of the Rav very seriously. I'm not, chas v'shalom, saying anything contrary to that. I'm saying what guides the Rav. It should be a genuine interpretation that is sensitive toward the world that we live in. There's a reason God makes things popular in the world around us. It's for us to reflect on those ideas and establish what the true Torah interpretation or approach to that issue is. Governed by our encounter with new things that have not happened. Okay, there's nothing new under the sun. Ideas are responded to in a way that's new under the sun. You have the opportunity, rather, to interpret things in the way it makes sense to you. That is a litmus test of genuine direction in Torah and genuine leadership, as opposed to not being a leader and just being dogmatic and not talking about ideas and just talking about authority, politics. That's dogma. It is interesting to know how an entire modest dress is relatively occasional. Okay, spoke about Rivka. Sarah Mena was totally concealed when crossing the border to Egypt. So there are times where you make your whole border around you and you cover yourself even. There was such a time where it had to be the full burqadoo. I don't know what they call that whole thing, the hijab, or I don't know, whatever it's called. The thing that you walk in like a box on the street with like a slit through. You could probably have like okay, there are extremes that there's a time and place for those. I'm just telling you what it says in the Torah. You'd show me that the Chumash does not say this. That it's relative to circumstance and through time. Okay, time I might need a specific proof. Sarah Mena was totally concealed when crossing the border to Egypt. Erev Haaretz, where licentiousness prevailed. So in certain environments, you have a higher standard of tznius. If people are disrespectful of your space and your freedom even here. You have to be more cautious. There's a principle of tznius that you could tell me, just shut up. What am I saying that should be silenced right now? Let's go further. Maybe I haven't said the words yet. This is the words. Listen, this is the words I think that they had a problem with. And this is just a fact. Listen, official Chabad outreach initiative often feature women. That is a fact that no one will argue with. Maybe I reported information that we want to actually, through propaganda, not just blot it out. It did not happen. Chabad.org does not exist. To a certain older school, Chabad.org is conservative, very conservative. They're changing a little bit now. Okay, they got guys like Michal Kigel, that's just incredible. Incredible, really radicals. He's a radical, he's awesome. That is a modern thinker. That one is someone who's open-minded. I haven't spoken to him, I'm just judging by the fact that he's not afraid to break some taboos, to be expressive, to use meaningful forums, or genres rather, to engage people. That is so important now. So when are they trying to disengage a topic? Women. So here I just reported a fact. You can't argue that this is just a fact. Maybe it's in my next sentence. Clearly there are times and places where it is deemed appropriate. Maybe, okay, that's my own interpretation. Maybe that's what they have a problem with. Since I interpret this to mean that just because Chabad.org does it, means that they have a halachic standpoint or something. I'm not looking for extra chumas than Chabad.org. I'm not looking to that Rav to say, I'm about to do something that's a standard that Chabad.org does, and I think that I should be firmer than that. I don't need to be so crazy. You can be that crazy, fine, but don't silence me, or just accept that my resignation comes for a reason. If I'm not allowed to interpret that. To say that Chabad.org is actually something that does set a precedent. I once went to Rabbi Marlel Shalom regarding what I knew it said in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, that you have to cover your feet. Okay, he doesn't say you have to cover your feet. He says you have to go out on the street in breeches, probably because in those days the fashion was to wear, if you didn't wear breeches, that means your leg will be exposed up to like your knee, and that's like embarrassing already. So therefore you have to wear breeches. So if you translate breeches as socks, you've just interpreted to mean that you have to wear socks all the time, especially if you're a woman, right? Because for sure, if a man can't do it, it's talking about a man, that a woman can't do it. I'm in the middle of a major construction zone. It looks like there's like two huge tractors beside me. Sorry, it's distracting. So, do we have to be firmer than Chabad.org? They say yes. This magazine that I wrote for over 20 years is apparently, because I didn't say anything worse than that. Okay, let's go further. Maybe it's something else. Lashing out blindly at this approach is akin to rebuking a Jewish man who trims his beard for not following Chabad's stricter observance of the matter. In other words, they say something. Maybe they interpret what I just said to mean that we could be very lax. Because I shouldn't rebuke other people because they shouldn't, when they don't have a beard. Okay, so I don't know if that's it. Maybe it's not even relevant, that whole point. In any event, the ability to tightrope walk, modest behavior, while attending to the need for outreach, the power to do so comes from Leah Imenu, symbol of tshuva. Okay, it goes on, it's a bit technical there. That's not what their problem is, that I'm quoting about Leah. But okay, maybe that is their problem. Maybe I should read this. Is there a problem the way that I'm just reporting what the Rebbe said? This is a direct translation, all this. I can't believe that. So I'm going to go further. Thus, Leah was not outwardly attractive, at least compared to Rachel. And here's just paraphrasing the Rebbe's words. Leah's beauty dimmed from suffering her presumed fate of marrying the wicked Esav. Tears of anguish washed away her beauty. The eyes of Leah were rakis, tender. Here, however, Leah's sensitivity and suffering were actually the source of her strength, fueling her prayer. In its marriage, she had the power to transform even the wickedness of Esav. Prayer is potent for it. No, okay, this is technical. This is not what they had a problem with. Leah confronted Esav spiritually in prayer. The result was the transformation of her own destiny. Okay, this is maybe what more offensive to them. Like mother, like daughter, Leah's daughter Dinah is also characterized by going out of the private domain to inspire people to return to God. The tragic result of her outreach, being taken captive by the prince Shem, was not the result of her own impropriety, but quite the opposite. It was her father. Okay, it's a father's punishment. Here I mentioned that Dinah goes out. This is the Rebbe Sikha, the exact idea. This very fact illustrates how Dinah's venturing out was not something inappropriate. This is directly the Rebbe's words verbatim. It was rather with the godly intent of having a positive influence of the women of Shechem. In fact, the influence of women, and then it goes on to say how women are more influential than men. Okay, we've spoken about that before. That's all I wrote. So my interpretation of their dogma here is that Chabad.org is wrong. It's inappropriate for women to have a voice. They don't even want me to say that sometimes it is appropriate. Those are the only words that I wrote. That means that their shita is, their approach, the way they could say different, and I'll think about it. Fine, let's have that conversation. But I have to infer, since there's this veil of silence, all it's like flowery, you're such a good guy, whatever, all this garbage. These are serious, these are ideas. Talk about ideas. That's geschmack. Try and understand why you think that your old school slice in history interpretation of a Rebbe is the only way. And everything else has to be silenced. So if the women are saying, my voice, this is what women are saying. Okay, maybe they're so off the path, okay? It's just the women that never leave the house. Those are the only ones that I should value. The women out there, they're disingenuous somehow, or they're corrupted by wanting to actually have a voice that could be heard by men. Okay, I don't want to get into the discussion of whether they invite a general audience, or if they don't, their policies on kicking people out. Because what happens? Okay, you have an all-women's venue, and a guy shows up. There's a way to deal with it. I'm sure there's a protocol. Maybe for hockey, if the janitor's there, and there's a women's hockey group, there's a stigma about that too. Okay, we have to question our stigmas and determine how we are going to respond to them. How we are going to either embrace the culture we're in, create the culture we're in, or leave the culture entirely. That is our choice. That is the bechira, the gift that God gave us. Okay, I've lectured you enough. Now you can lecture me. Once in a lifetime chance. Go ahead. Someone blew in the lifetime. Shevat li kam shevet binyamin loy yachriya loy yeshwe amen. I don't know exactly what it was. Good practice, BH. Better than last time. Should improve steadily. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Okay. I'm sure there's some continuity. Maybe it has to do with nap time. Okay. You guys have a conversation about nap time there, and I'll talk about something over here. Perfect. Okay. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you for joining me.